I want you to know. I'm not going to kill you because you're going to cause World War III. And I'm not doing it to save the world. I'm killing you because you took the life of the only friend I have, and the only one of us with an ounce of kindness in her veins.
We've made it to the end of the line where the Commandos come face to face with trying to complete their mission and killing who they believe is a world-destroying monster in the princess. Meanwhile, we witness one of, if not the most tragic backstory of all of the characters who unfortunately doesn't make it out of the finale alive. Time to recap and talk some DC and break down and discuss Episode 7, Season 1 finale of Creature Commandos. Spoilers ahead. We open the finale with the birth of Nina as we watch her being brought into the world with an irregular condition with her lungs outside of her body. As the nurse suggests to Nina's father, who we find out is a world-renowned scientist, he could develop a way to keep her alive. As we see how discouraged her mother is, but her father is hopeful and gives her the name of Nina. Now let's actually stick with Nina for a little bit and go over her backstory from this episode. As we flash forward to seeing Nina now at home and her father having built her a device that helps her breathe. Now it's clear that he's adjusted to her condition, but her mother is still upset with her situation and can't bear to see her firstborn daughter like this. As we see Nina's mom sharing her perspective of the life Nina would have to live with constantly having to try out new machines and devices to live and having this ongoing struggle. As Nina's mom Lily goes even further in saying that they should have just made the decision at the birth to end Nina's life and that they still have the opportunity to do so, but this is when Nina's father steps in, Edward, and tells her to stop by saying anything further, as she says that she's going to be visiting her mother for a while, as it's pretty safe to assume that this is the last time that she's going to be in Nina's life and she never returned. Now as some time has passed, we see little Nina is struggling to walk to the park as her father promises that he's got a new treatment for her that won't require her to wear the machine. Now in this surgery, we know that her father is very aware of the risks, but if this new treatment pays off, Nina won't have to worry about carrying the machine anymore. Now as we watch the transformation of her DNA with what we later find out to be as mixed with elements of aquatic animals, suddenly things take a turn for the worse as her body begins to mutate into a mermaid. Now her father puts her in a sink of water to save her, and it actually works, but we see that he is the one that created this monster, or at least the monster that people see Nina as. To me, this is yet another example of these creatures who have been created by humans and ultimately some of them being destroyed by them as well. Now we skip ahead in time again and we see an older version of Nina as her father's trying to get her out of her comfort zone from being homeschooled this whole time and also only really knowing her father, as she gets accepted into a prep school for socializational purposes. Now we see her joining the lacrosse team, but she gets bullied on and off the field as she gets called a frog and is forced to act like one as well. To me, this is illustrating how the humans treated her badly and never really accepted her as one of their own, which plays a big part into her decision that she makes later in this episode. As Nina continues to get bullied at school, we see that she's had enough as she ultimately writes her father a goodbye letter and thanks him for being such a great father, as she runs away from home and heads into the sewers to be free of all the judgments from humans. Now we cut to present day where we find Eric heading to the palace filled with excitement because he's finally going to be reunited with his bride. Which, speaking of, we see the Commandos slowly making their way into the palace after the bride brutally kills one of the guards. Now back outside, Eric arrives and sees this and is happy to see that his bride hasn't changed one bit. Now Nina brings up her concerns about their mission being a mistake and killing a princess for no reason, but the bride points out that the risk is worth the reward of potentially saving the world from ending. Now as they try to find a way to avoid as many guards as possible, they search for a way inside, but they come across some footage of the princess meeting with a mysterious monster who's later to be revealed to be Clayface. Now to me, the show could have did a much better job of not showing us this somewhat blurred image of Clayface and instead just showed the Commandos' reaction to the footage on the computer monitor, because it was pretty obvious that that was Clayface. I mean, you can literally see its arms, and Nina saying that it was a monster visitor was more of a giveaway, but I just found it funny that the show tried to frame it as some type of mystery. Now meanwhile, Eric tries to surprise the bride but is welcomed with bullets to his chest. Now as Eric tries to tell her the message from Flag, we see the bride cuts him off by shooting him in the head for the kill shot, but this isn't the last time we'll be seeing Eric, as we'll be talking about him a little bit later on as they continue on their mission. Now the Commandos end up finding a soft spot where there's less guards as Dr. Phosphorus begins burning a hole in the wall. Meanwhile, despite the high level security going on, we see the princess decides that this is a great time to continue her morning routine, which is going for a morning swim. Now the Commandos see their window of opportunity to killing the princess as Weasel starts to freak out, as we know it's wanting to protect her. Now, as the princess jumps in the water, the bride knows that this is the perfect opportunity for Nina, being the only way that can kill her because she has home field advantage. Now, during all this, we head over to the hospital where Flag awakens for a brief moment as he manages to give Waller enough information to pay a visit to the professor's house. Now, back with the Commandos, the bride and Dr. Phosphorus convince Nina that she's saving the world, and at the end of the day, the princess is just another human and Nina is a monster just like them. To me, this was a character moment for Nina, as this is probably the first time that she feels a part of something and she's accepted by others beside her father, as she accepts this mission and she's going to be the one that's going to kill the princess. Now, here's where Nina's backstory and the main story intersect, as the flashback shows Nina, who's been on the run for the last 3 years, as she gets spotted in the public by a photographer, as we see the Star City News reporting on the sighting of a sea creature. Now, for those who might have forgotten or maybe just didn't know, but Star City is actually the home of the DC hero Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow. Now, personally, I was thinking that we were going to get a cameo from maybe Green Arrow or maybe some other heroes, especially after the news reported that the animal control from Metropolis and Bloodhaven were going to be on the hunt for Nina, but unfortunately, we didn't get any cameos, but this does at least confirm the existence of both cities, which to me means that the characters aren't too far away from making their DCU appearance. Now, we watch as she gets caught by the animal control and she's being treated like a monster, or better yet, she's being treated like the creature from the Black Lagoon, as we see her father arrives on the scene and tries to help her, and he tells her that she's never been a burden to him and she's the greatest gift he's ever had, but he never really gets the chance to finish his sentence because unfortunately he's shot by a police officer. As we see Nina sees this as she's being taken away, and I would imagine this is where she's taken to Belle Reve shortly after. Now, connecting that flashback to the present day sequence, after humans took her father away and under the influence that the princess will take even more away, we cut to seeing Nina under the water with a knife in hand prepared to kill the princess. Now, back with Waller and John, they arrive at the professor's house as they discover the remains of Clayface, but they also find the professor's body and they immediately try to call off the mission. Now, back with Nina, as she gets closer to the princess, the Knights get the call from Waller. Now, outside, we see the Weasel makes his moves and jumps in the water to warn the princess, which actually works because we see the princess sees Nina under the water and stops her, as Weasel bites Dr. Phosphorus. Now, under the water, we find Nina and the princess fighting over the knife, but the princess ultimately gets the upper hand, and she gets the knife and stabs Nina in the stomach several times, and you'll notice the look in the princess's eyes. It's similar to the one we saw her have in the future vision where she took over the world. It's like she has this bloodthirst. Now, I don't know if the glow of blue in the princess's eyes have a deeper meaning or if it's just like a visual effect to really show her more colder side, but either way, watching Nina die to me was the saddest moment, not just of this finale, but of the entire show. As we see Nina's body float up, the bride sees her dead body as the princess resurfaces with Nina's blood on her face. The reason I felt this was the saddest moment or death of the show was because Nina was truly the one character who actually cared. She never wanted to harm or hurt anyone, and even after seeing her get abandoned by her mother and getting bullied at school, she never wanted to seek out vengeance or had any hate towards humans, and the one time she thought acting on violence, she ends up getting killed, and I felt like the bride felt responsible for getting her killed as she sees her lifeless body in the water. Now, as the bride looks in shock and now they're surrounded by the Knights, Waller speaks to the bride over the phone and tells her that she made a mistake, but obviously it's too late because the damage was already done. Now, we cut back inside the palace where Weasel is being called a hero at the highest regards and will be rewarded for saving the princess. Meanwhile, the bride has some words to share with the princess as she goes looking for her in the palace. Now, the princess tells the bride that she understands that she was tricked by Cersei and she forgives her for trying to kill her and thinking that she was trying to save the world. Now, during this, we see the bride looks over the princess's collection of books and finds different stories about fate versus free will and other stories about revenge and social classes. We even get this meta moment of the bride picking up a book from Mary Shelley, who we know is the creator of both Frankenstein and The Bride, as she tells the princess that she believes Cersei was telling the truth and that she saw the princess with Clayface, and she goes over the princess's plan. As the bride lays it all out, first the princess slept with Flag to get him on her side, then she had one of her knights spy on the Commandos, which we cut to episode 3 seeing this happen. Now, the knight must have gotten some details from the professor confirming Cersei's vision, and from there she hired Clayface. Now, it was never explained how the princess and Clayface knew each other and how they were friends, but maybe there's more to that story in the future, like maybe we'll see it in Clayface's film, or maybe even in season 2 of Creature Commandos. But like I thought back in episode 3, it is confirmed that the professor was really herself when she spoke to Waller and Clayface killed her after. Now, the bride calls the princess out for who she really is and calls her this power-mad, narcissistic Disney princess who wants to destroy the world for reasons that I don't feel like the show really expressed that well in depth, but we see the bride explains why she's going to kill the princess, and it's not for the reasons of saving the world, but instead it's because she took the life of the one person she considered to be a friend, and that's Nina. As the princess tries to kill the bride, but she's too slow as she shoots her square in the head, and she gets her hero moment, but more importantly, she gets her revenge. Now again, I'm assuming those books the princess had really spoke to her character motivations, but also remembering what she said to Flag back in episode 1 about how her country stuck in their old ways, and if we tried to break out of those ways, it was considered to be corruption, and her wanting to bring her country into the 21st century. But I just feel like the show really didn't truly go over those details too much, and it really didn't go into depth of explaining and understanding what led her to wanting to actually take over the world, unless, again, maybe she's not dead. Maybe somehow she's going to return and be more menacing, and we see this more menacing side of the princess in season 2. Let me know in the comments below, do you all feel like the show did enough to make you believe that the princess would eventually become this big bad villain that's going to take out not only the world, but also taking out the Justice League members? Do you feel like the show did enough in working out that story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, I'll be honest, I did not like the last 5 minutes of how this show kind of ended. It felt not only confusing, but it also felt extremely rushed. Now, again, remember, the queen of this country, who's almost dead, but she is still alive, she just lost her daughter, who was just killed by the bride, a monster sent by the US government. We watched the commandos basically walk out of the palace without no one stopping them, especially the knights not hearing the gunshots upstairs, as we see these 2 random people that we've never seen before, as one of them gets slammed to the ground by the bride. As we see the bride crying, again, we know she's crying because she just lost her close friend, and we watch them just walk away. Again, no one heard the gunshots, no one checked on the princess, their country isn't upset by what just happened, like the war is not going to be started after this. Now, back in the US, we cut to Belle Reve, where we see John poking fun of Rick Flag, who was head over heel the princess, and he's talking to the bride while he's doing that. I'm assuming some time has passed, and I'm also assuming that the bride explained everything to Waller, and all is forgiven, and killing the princess was the right decision. Again, the knights didn't care their princess has died, the queen didn't care, the country didn't care. I guess, again, it just seems so sloppy to me, but we might see some more of this being explored in season 2 of Creature Commandos, maybe Peacemaker season 2, or hell, maybe even in Superman we might have some ties to what just went down. Either way, we see Waller thanks the bride by creating this dedicated space for her team, which includes Dr. Phosphorus and Weasel, but we also see this newly supersized, updated version of G.I. Robot, who must have gotten their memories wiped because he didn't seem to know who the bride was. But we're also introduced to some new members, as we have Nosferatu, who we briefly met in episode 4. We have Callus the Mummy, who in the comics serves as the team medic. And last but not least, we got the return of King Shark, who we last saw in James Gunn's Suicide Squad, as the bride's got nothing better else to do but to lead this team and to take more orders and missions from Amanda Waller. Now, cut to the post-credit scene where we see Eric survive getting shot by the bride as he's eating some soup with the same old lady who called him back in episode 1. And even after being shot and presumably thought to be dead, he thinks that he has even more of a connection with the bride and he can't wait to see her again. Now, let's briefly talk about this finale and the season overall. First off, I thought this was a very entertaining and fun series and had some really cool characters who I found to be very compelling. I thought the show did a solid job of having the storyline and a theme that focused on the misunderstood characters being coined as monsters, but as we saw, most of them were just misjudged or put in positions where they had to act on the more aggressive side to avoid being killed or taken advantage of. Now, we obviously saw that with the bride, who really to me had no intentions of becoming this killer, but after what happened to Victor, she didn't get a full chance to really experience much of happiness before Eric killed him. We know that G.I. Robot was programmed for one thing, and once he completed the job, he basically was thrown away until he was needed again. We know the Weasel meant no harm to anyone, he was just trying to save those kids, but since he couldn't communicate, he was blamed for their deaths, and we obviously know what happened with Nina. So I liked a lot of these characters. Like, again, I've been saying it for weeks. The Bride was my favorite character. I really enjoyed Nina. I like Rick Flag, even though he was kind of absent in the last 2 episodes. But I really enjoyed how they mixed in the backstory and how that tied into what was going on with the present storylines. I honestly don't have any major issues with the show besides some of the episodes feeling really short, but also feeling like the middle episodes didn't really have as much depth as the previous episodes. I'm really referring to episodes 5 and 6 compared to episodes 3 and 4, and really feeling like the finale kind of felt rushed towards the end. But overall, I thought, again, this was a fun and enjoyable series. It was a great way to be introduced to the DCU and having all the little Easter eggs from Sergeant Rock and the Metal Men and Clayface, and of course being a lifelong Batman fan, it was great seeing their silhouette. Now, looking ahead, as far as when do we expect to see these characters again? Now, obviously, we know that Superman is the next thing on the slate, and honestly, I don't see the events from this show having much to any impact on the film, besides, of course, seeing Rick Flag Sr. again, and most likely probably seeing Waller, and maybe, just maybe, we might see Cersei again. A lot of people have speculated they believe that the fight that's going on in the background, this shot here that was seen in the Superman trailer, might be Cersei going against the Green Lantern, so we might see if Cersei's in the film. But again, I wouldn't lose sleep if we don't see any Creature Commandos making an appearance in Superman. But I would not be surprised if we see some of the characters making their live action debut in Peacemaker Season 2. Hell, I would go even as far as to say that I would be shocked if we don't see a character or two making an appearance in that show. To me, Peacemaker just fits the same tone and kind of carries a lot of the same storylines. Like, for example, we know that Peacemaker Season 1 carried into the first episode of Creature Commandos, so it only feels right that we see some of the events carrying over to Season 2 of Peacemaker, and whatever happens at the end of that season, I wouldn't be surprised if it sets up the beginning of Season 2 of Creature Commandos. So before I wrap up, as always, check out my short reactions to some of the highlights of this episode, but more importantly, let me know what you all thought of this finale. Did you feel like it was satisfying? Did you like the conclusion? Did you get emotional seeing Nina's backstory and obviously her death? What did you all think about the season overall? Did you all have a favorite character, a favorite episode? And let me know, when do you all think that we'll see these characters again before we see Season 2? Thank you all for watching my breakdown, and if you watched all 7 of my breakdowns for the last month and a half, I really appreciate the support. Next on the horizon, I'll plan on covering shows like Severance Season 2, Invincible Season 3, also The White Lotus Season 3, so if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button, but also if you're interested in those shows I just mentioned, definitely consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. Don't forget, you all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.